Okay, let's go ahead and get started because we have a lot to cover. I know Valerie's at a conference, so I don't know if she'll be able to attend. So, but most everybody else is here except for Adnan, I believe. So, thank you, everybody. Good seeing everybody's faces. We saw a lot of you at Hagg Mud. That was fun. Have a good time. We do have a lot to cover tonight, so I'm going to try to move pretty quickly, but please don't be afraid to speak up if you have questions and stuff like that, especially around my favorite part. In my old life, I was a director of financial aid at colleges, and so I was the one who gave out financial aid to students who applied for aid to go to college, and that's my favorite part of the job, is giving away money. And so my favorite part of this meeting is going to be giving away money. So just to give you a heads up. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is approve the minutes from the February meeting, right? Yes, February meeting. So I would welcome, does anybody have any updates or questions or corrections to the minutes from February?
I didn't see any corrections that people put in there.
Okay. They look good to me. Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Carrie, and who is
Mark.
the second? Mark?
Mark Texawa.
Thank you. Okay.
All in favor of approving the February minutes, let's say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Minutes are accepted. Thank you. Thank you, Debbie. Deb. Let's see here. The next is treasurer's report. Debbie, and I told her we're probably going to do this skimming over. There's not a whole lot of activity on there. Go ahead, Debbie.
Yes, not a whole lot of activity. I sent what I was going to show to everyone. If anyone has questions or comments on it, please let us know. Let me know. Two small things. One, I didn't have all of the Hagg Lake expenses, which Deb has meticulously kept. So I expect we'll have that next time. And one thing is we have always had, well, since I've been here for over a year, we've had a lot in the checking, and now we see the cash flow. I don't think we need a lot in the checking, so I don't even think we need a motion, but I just wanted people to know that I'm going to transfer about half of our checking into just the savings right there at the same place, just so the checking earns 0 interest and the savings earns, 0.01, or I can't remember what it is, but 0.01 is better than 0. So
yeah.
I don't think there are any objections, but if there are, let me know. And that's really all that is happening with that, except after we have the giveaway of all the money this month.
Cool. All right. Thank you, Debbie. Conflict of interest. I am just missing Mark Tekazawas, but I just emailed it to him. So that's the last one. So that's done. Thank you, everybody, for returning those. Quick recap. Deb, you did a fantastic job.
You did a great job.
So great.
You guys are so nice. Oh my God, how stressful. It was really funny going to the race director workshop last spring with Julia and Tracy, and hearing Tracy say, yeah, being a race director really stressed me out. I like doing behind the scenes better. I'm like, now I kind of understand. It's a lot to hold, especially when it's a race that has 20+ years history. So I definitely had a stressed out moment where a volunteer came over and was like, you're really pissing people off. Although Carrie.
It was the most uncomfortable moment of the entire weekend.
It was very uncomfortable, yes. But I took it in a positive sense that, like, he's upset and I can take that in a positive way and go with it for quality improvement.
Yeah, you did such a good job. I was thoroughly impressed. I learned from you actually that day. So
Carrie, thank you so much. Tracy and Julia, Mark Barrett. Mark Barrett was like my right-hand man. He did like all the traffic signage stuff, I think I made him bored though, because he was just sitting there without something to do at some point. And then he was like, I'm tired, and he disappeared. He also let me stay at his house the night before, and his roommate is just lovely. So got a lot of support. Joel helped with getting propane tanks filled. I mean, it's a team effort. So definitely some challenges to learn from next year to take forward to autumn leaves. And hopefully, you know, not having a weather postponement will make things go more smoothly.
Yes.
Like I haven't looked at Debbie's numbers because I have one more thing that I have to mail out. So I was waiting to send my expense report to Debbie Hall before I had one more shirt that someone requested me to send to them. So once I do that, like I've been kind of tracking the expenses, and there's a few that might not know about that people have that are small things, but basically it looks like we're going to have about I thought we might be as much as $6,000 in the hole with the race, but right now my accounting looks like 2,500 before I sent my about 500 in. So I think we'll be about 3,000 in the hole, which isn't bad considering the fact that I basically bought enough hats that now it's going to last us 2 years, maybe more. The socks I have will last us at least 2 years because of the number of finishers we had. So like I have a lot of back stock that I'm not going to have to rebuy, and who knows how much hats from China are going to cost next year. So
There you go. There you go.
so there's that.
I will also mention real quick, I sent to Debbie Hall just before the meeting, the fundraising check request. It's $100.
Okay.
Right.
No high. So that's just be aware.
And
of
I accounted for that actually.
Did you?
So
Okay. Good.
Oh, yeah.
Good.
I'm keeping track of all that stuff.
You've been very good. So very good.
So yeah, it's a learning experience for all you new race directors. You will stress and you will sweat. And oh my gosh, Tracy was like, it's 5 minutes before the race. Do you want to make your announcements? Or 10 minutes before the race? Like I was totally buried. So I'm like, oh, I'll need to hire a timekeeper to be watching out for me. So it's great. It's a team effort, everyone.
Yeah. That was
Good
good.
job. Good job. All right. The race director workshop, which was held last weekend before last, went really well. We had up to 20 people show up, sign up, and then we had I think a dozen people actually ended up attending. People were emailing, we can't make it, so like that. But it was a good group. We were at the Bethany Library Annex from Bethany. And that's a great room. It's awesome. So if we ever want to use that again for anything, it was really nice. It fit us very well. And the only downside is you can only request it
30 days.
30 days in advance,
Something like
60
that.
days in
60
advance.
days,
It's
maybe.
something you can't reserve it well in advance, but it was an awesome space. So it worked really well. Lots of positive feedback. So it was fun. So let's see. Going into our discussion topics. Updated dates for Best Dam Run and Autumn Leaves. We need to update the ORRC website, which I think Carissa already did. And Ultra sign up, I'll leave that to you, Deb, because you know how to do that and I can't get in there. And then run sign up for Best Dam Run, which I think we already updated Best Dam Run. They just need to figure out their costs now before they can go live. So that's okay there. And then I'm in the process of confirming with the photographers and the porta potties and the timers who can make it. Unfortunately, Jeff Huber, I don't believe is going to be able to make those dates. So either one, he's already committed. So, but run sign up athletic time, and I'm sure they'll be able to do it because they're always available. The next question I had is the coupon code at the Shamrock Expo. We were going to do a coupon code to hand out. And I just needed some clarification from the last meeting. Did we want to do just one coupon specifically for Champoeg? And in that one, we would do like a $10 off Champoeg entry fee since it's just the following weekend. We have a Champoeg flyer. We would just staple the coupon to the flyer and say, hey, if you want to do Champoeg, here's a code for $10 off or something like that. Or did we want to do a coupon that was maybe $5 for all events in 2025? I wasn't sure what we want. I wanted to make sure I understood what we wanted before I did it.
I don't think Valerie was on the last meeting, but she already set up a code, and she has the flyers for the Shamrock Expo. So I don't know if she put it on there or not, but if she did, we could just change it on what we decide tonight.
Okay. Do you know what how much she was going to offer off?
I think the last I heard was 15%.
15%, okay.
Yeah. So it wasn't a dollar amount, it was just a percentage. I don't know how many we'll get. Right now our numbers are total 134. So we're keeping it kind of small, keeping the
Yeah.
cost down, but I figure we'll pick up another 10 maybe from the expo. So
Okay. Well, if she's coming to the, she's
second shift.
going to be at the expo. She's in the second shift. She's
Yeah.
not on the first shift.
Okay.
So,
I like that 15% because then it depends on which race they do, you know?
yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
But my understanding, it was with the discussion from last time, it was just about offering that code just for Champoeg,
That's fine. Okay.
not for all regions. Like, for example, Vernonia, I mean, jump ahead a little bit on the report for that, but our numbers are aligned with last year. So, I don't, maybe you get closer, I may change my mind, but now it looks like I don't think we need to have that incentive, at least for Vernonia. So.
Yeah, and it was just going to be for the weekend,
Yeah.
the expo special. I got a question though on autumn leaves.
Uh-huh.
Who is a race director on that?
Deb Brown and Noel Tavin was going to co-RD with you, and Joel, were you going to? And Joel,
Correct.
so
Yep.
3.
Have you did anything about permits or anything like that?
Well, yeah, we could talk about that later, but the problem with the state parks that I'm running into, and maybe you guys have a solution for this, is that you can't apply for the permit until you've reserved the resources, which is like the pavilion. And you can't reserve the pavilion until 6 months ahead. Exactly 6 months ahead is when the state parks open it. And you can't like call the park. Like I tried calling the park and asking like, do I get that? Like, can I do it differently if it's an event? And the answer I got was no. I don't know if that was incorrect. But so like for a late in the year event like this, where we pick the date, I can't actually start getting permits until like 6 months, like 7 a.m. I'm going to get online and try to reserve the pavilion.
You know what? If you
What?
want, I'm going to go there next week. I could get it for you.
What do you mean?
For me, they allowed me to get it a year in advance and just word of mouth. I don't have to go in.
So do you
I have a rapport with the ranger and everything.
Oh.
So-
They like it.
So you can, so if I were to also establish a relationship with the ranger, that potentially could happen, or is it just because he really, really likes you?
I want to say he really, really likes me, but it's the office staff too, because there's
Okay.
Brenda, that's the office manager that I have a rapport with, and
Well, that'd be awesome.
David's the ranger. But he said for our events for ORRC,
Yeah.
he's reserving what they call the legacy events. If we had it a long time.
Okay. You're right.
And he'll do it up to a year in advance. He's trying this out. He just needs to know the date and he'll reserve it for us.
So it's funny because I had emailed the ranger and like, I don't know if I just got the wrong person to email, but that's a really great solution because I was getting pretty stressed out about that. So thanks for that,
don't
Mark.
worry. I just call him and he said, okay.
So it sounds like Mark needs to make an introduction for you. So that
Yeah,
you
yeah.
have the same rapport.
And
Or
the
even
back,
if you
yeah,
told
the
me,
background of that was when I took over Champoeg, I kind of really schmoozed them because the people before kind of messed up the relationship with our club.
Okay.
So it's
yeah,
not
so
smooth over.
So maybe you can introduce me while
Yeah.
I'm there volunteering.
Yep.
It's October 25th is the date, by the way, Mark.
Yep.
So
Okay.
awesome. Okay. So we got that one, Carrie. Update on the Venmo policy and procedure. And Mark Barrett, you had written up a draft and did we had thought it was okay, what you wrote up. We just had that one little correction to it.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, like we had a long discussion about it, and it came to a consensus. And I just, for my benefit and everybody's, I just said, put it down on paper, and so if we need to do additional discussion of it or just approve it as official policy, whatever, but I just, I just wanted something written to reflect what our discussion, what we decided.
great. No, I think what you wrote up is fit, it captured exactly what we wanted, and we just need to now put it into the policies and procedures and the race director manual.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Cool.
Awesome, thank you. And then the next one there, the two workshops, the AED first aid workshop and the communications workshop. Mark, you were gonna.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna take these next couple as a bunch because they're all kind of connected. The impetus started at Hagg Mud, and I got a taste of my own medicine because y'all have worked with me, and you know me when I'm in race director mode, I can be short because if I'm in get her done mode, and I had a couple of encounters with Deb at Hagg Mud where she was full on race director, and it was like, but, and so I got over it. But I went over to complain to Alan Cabelli about how Deb was being mean to me, and he says, it sounds to me like there was some miscommunication. And yeah, probably that's what it is. We just need to, work it out. So I don't know if y'all know, but Alan is a professor at PSU. I don't know if he's retired or not, but he's taught there forever. And one of the things he teaches is effective communication. So he offered to put on a communication workshop for race directors and also board members for Oregon Roadrunners Club for free, because normally he charges to do it, but he said he'd will be willing to do that for the benefit of the club, to understand how we communicate and how we can do it better, and particularly in our official roles as race directors and as board members and all that. And I said it's a great idea. So that's a piece of it. Something that I think is a great idea. Second bit is the club does have an AED, and the Red Cross encourages people to periodically be trained on it. And how can I say, the machine is essentially, if you ever used them before, is turn it on and follow the instructions. That's not all that complicated. But thing is, when you're not doing what the AED is telling you, you need to be doing CPR. And that's the thing that requires some training to be sure that you're doing it correctly. So it's been a long time since the club has sponsored AED CPR training. And it's not long, it takes about an hour or so really to cover it. But it's a worthwhile thing. So there's a second piece that we haven't done in a long time that would be worth doing. Another idea, since we were talking about CPR, is actual full-on, first aid training. And actually, for TKO, I just finished my recertification that I get every 2 years, my first aid certification, and that's the standard stuff we've all taken probably back in high school. All the stuff, how to put on a splint and all that kind of stuff. And that's kind of a next level thing if we wanted to require or encourage all race directors to be first aid CPR certified. I mean, we typically have medics on site for bigger events or more isolated events, but not all of them do. And wouldn't it be a nice thing if just we knew for sure that every race director was certified for first aid CPR kind of a thing. So that was kind of a nice idea. And one more idea, not too full yet, is flagger training. That not these days we hire D&H to flag for events, and it's pretty expensive. And wouldn't it be nice if we had some club members who were certified to do that, who would do it on a volunteer basis? We would pay for their training and ask them to be a flagger at a minimum, say 2 events a year or something like that, kind of a thing. But wouldn't it be nice if we had volunteer flaggers who were certified instead of paying people to do it and save some money in that process? So to tie it together, kind of 4 ideas here. The first idea is the communications workshop. Second is AED CPR. Third idea, first aid. And the fourth idea, the flagger training. And what I kind of envisioned for the, well, how can I say it, as far as doing it, we've got several approaches to doing that. The first approach would be for each of the, if we wanted to do all four, we can discuss them individually, but I'm just going to take an overall approach first. If we wanted to have all four, okay, the least expensive way of doing it is if we had a club member or someone who we knew who would offer their services, their training for free. For example, Alan is going to do the communications workshop for free. I vaguely remember Daniel Brewer being a flagger certifier. I don't know if that's true or if I'm remembering that correctly. But again, if we had someone in the club or someone we knew who would say, hey, I will teach you that thing for free, that would be the best way of doing it, you know, least expensive kind of a thing. And for each of those to investigate, is there someone willing to teach that class for free? Second way of doing it is if we need to hire somebody, that is pay someone to do it, to do a small group class kind of a thing. You know, we'd pick a date and a time where all the race directors would meet, and we'd have somebody come in and, you know, teach us about the AED and CPR kind of thing. So do it as a group. And a third way of going about it would be to tell race directors, go get first aid certified, we'll pay for it. You know, where they would get individually trained, but the club would reimburse them for, you know, the cost of taking the class. So there's several different approaches to it. You know, I think, you know, better for the club financially if we could find, you know, spaces where we'd have the class for free instead of ones to charge. If we could find people willing to teach for free, that would be better. But, you know, at some point, you know, it'll cost some money. But so kind of what I'm envisioning, and this is just, I know I'm throwing a lot out there, but these things are all kind of connected in my mind, is kind of a day that might look something like this. Alan tells me he needs 3 hours to teach his communications class. And like I said, the CPR AED class is about an hour, hour and a half long. So what I would see is like something like a Saturday, getting maybe the space at Bethany or, you know, the Beaverton Library, where the morning, you know, 9 to noon would be communications workshop. Alan would lead it. Take a break for lunch, and then, you know, from 12:30 to 2, have the AED CPR training. So kind of do it all in one day in one place, and, you know, feed everybody for showing up. And then the first aid, and I think the flagger training would be a separate thing in a separate location, but kind of envisioning a training day for race directors. The trick to all of that is finding the best possible day. I think we can get some good locations, Beaverton or Bethany. The tricky part with everybody's busy schedule is finding a good day for that. And, you know, you were never going to catch everybody, but if we could pick a date where we caught most people were able to attend. So I know that's a lot all at once, but to my mind, all those four things are connected and worthy of discussion. And I just pause here and answer questions, or, you know, let people discuss it.
Yep.
So a coaching, marathon coaching group that I was in one year provided first aid CPR training for the coaches if they didn't have it. I'm a healthcare provider, so I actually have to do the recertification every year. I do a slightly different CPR as a provider than bystander CPR does. But in any case, total 100% support. Like every time I do the CPR training, like that comes back to me easily. The AED, for some reason, like I don't ever use the AED. Like you have to, there's a thing of like, you turn it on first before you plug it in, or do you plug it in first and then turn it on? Like, it's like every single time I'm like, wait a second, which happens first? So that's super, super valuable. Personally, I think it would be really great if we offered, so, and usually first aid, CPR, AED can actually be done all together. That's how our coaches got it in that group. And it's cheaper if you hire someone to do it for your group. If you pay to send people out individually, they'll be paying the market rate. But if you hire someone to come in and do the training, that's going to save money. So that's number one. Number two, I really think it would be valuable to offer it to members. And even if it's just like that they pay $5 or $10, you know, less than what it might cost to do. The more hands you have available for CPR, if you need to do it, the better. So I think, like, as a promotion of health in our club, it'd probably be a good idea to open it up, and then we just make sure that we'd have enough people.
Yeah. I like the idea of opening it up to members. I had not thought about that, but that's a great idea. So
That too. And it would work too. I mean, like I said, I just finished my first aid CPR recertification. Mine is for the, you know, regular people, not medical professionals. And it was a combination of it. There's an online portion that you do in advance, and then there's an in-person portion, and that they would still that the model I've talked about. Like we had a day in the morning, Alan leading the communications workshop, break for lunch, and then do the first aid CPR thing part of the afternoon. And if we do some of the work online in advance, so we could fit it into that time frame. I would add my voice to agree. Let's open it to board members and RDs and general membership. Would be awesome. Would be awesome.
Susan?
Yeah, I also agree that it's a great idea to open it up to board members and then to the general membership. And I think the company I used to work for, we would offer it to train all the employees. And I think if you're bringing in an instructor like Deb Brown said to do, it doesn't matter if there's 10 or 20 or 30 people, you're just paying the instructor for a class. So you might as well bring in 10 or 15 from the general board, from the general club membership, and it's the same cost to us and more benefit to us. So.
Does Deb, do you know if you have someone in mind or someone you've worked with before?
No, when I lived in Vermont, I had worked with someone who then started a business where she did first aid CPR training. So I know it from that perspective, but you know, that's 20 years ago. So I just know conceptually that, and also from this marathon training group where they did it for the coaches, which I didn't actually attend it because I was like, well, I already have my certification, so I didn't want to make them pay the money for me or whatever.
Sure. Because I just think, like, in my training I went to, our instructor was from Clackamas Community College. So I'm thinking, I'm sure like PCC and other places would be a place to contact someone and get someone to lead the class.
Yeah, I think that you can look on American Heart Association. Does CPR first aid, and then Red Cross probably does. I think the American Heart Association is their certification is good for 2 years.
Okay.
And, the other one, it's only good for 1 year, but only one of them might actually do first aid. So I had to move rooms.
Okay. So
how about we try this, Mark? Why don't we, can we do a survey of all race directors and board members on like the Google Drive, do a form and a survey saying, just asking them, provide a couple of dates and just see which one works best for everybody. And once we know a date, then we can kind of look at a location.
That would assume that I knew how to do that. Which I don't. How about if let's break this, because I don't want to spend too much time on this because more research has to be done. But if you, Tracy and Julia, would be willing to put out a survey is to all board members and all race directors, is to, give them 3 dates, find the best date, and reserve a space for that date. Like I said, I'm thinking like a, it'd be probably, depending upon, when, because some open later, but, something like 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., something like that for a time slot on a day where the morning would be Alan and in the afternoon would be first aid CPR. And so if you want to do the survey on the where and when, I'll start working on the who. I mean, I'll talk to Alan about what he needs to put on the class, materials and such. I'll also contact the Red Cross and, see about finding an instructor. So I'll work on that end of it and see
Before
what we
we
can.
put something out, could you talk with Alan and find out what dates work for him? Because he's the crucial one we need to have there. So,
Okay, I can
Okay.
contact him.
and
So
once we
that's
have,
kind of the first. So that's kind of the two parts of the first aid and communications. The other part is the flagger training. I think that's a good idea if we can, if we had club members who are certified flaggers. It's kind of it's a separate thing. So and I think for all of this too, like before we get too far out there, if I can say, if we want to, Alan is willing to work for free. And what if we just kind of put out a quick email to the general membership? Because maybe we have a club member who is, oh, I'm a first aid certifier, and I'll do it for half price or whatever kind of a thing, So, and same thing with the flagger stuff. Just put it out there that, hey, we're looking to put together a class. Is anybody out there who does this sort of thing? Put that out there first. And if somebody steps forward, awesome. If they don't, we'll hire somebody, kind of thing. So
let's start with Daniel. Okay, great.
yeah,
All right, we will move forward on that then.
cool.
Okay, the next thing on the agenda, we are stealing from somebody. At the RD workshop, we met with one of the participants there was Connor Davis. He's with THPRD. He does the junior high track meets and the junior high cross country meets and stuff. Anyway, they have started a new reward system for their kids in track, and theirs is going to be a magnet. Patrick, I think it was magnet, and it just says PR. So it's like a little square, and it says PR, and so if a kid gets a PR in an event, they're handed this thing. And we kind of remembered that when we go to Disney, obviously a lot, and when you're in Disney, they give away free buttons, like 3-inch buttons, and they're called celebration buttons. And it says celebrating, and then there's a space, and with a marker you can write in, I'm celebrating my birthday, I'm celebrating our anniversary, I'm celebrating my first visit, or whatever it is. Anyway, so we thought it would be really fun. We have the bibs already for first 5K, first 10K, first. It'd be fun to maybe have buttons, just simple, easy, cheap buttons that say ORRC, PR, and then there would be a space for them to write in like the date and the event or the distance and the time on it. So if they're doing it for their first 5K, they'll automatically get a PR. So at the end of the event, if they get a PR, there'll be the buttons at the finish line. They could pick up a button and write in their thing. We just thought that would be kind of a fun thing to add to.
Have you guys ever heard of at the end of the California International Marathon, they have a big bell, and so if people get a Boston qualifier, they ring the bell, I think.
Oh, that's what Mark does.
Yeah, so but you could also do it just for PRs, that people, if they get a PR, then they could go ring the bell. That could be fun in addition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So are the buttons something that would be somewhat generic to be able to use at all the events? It wouldn't be specific. Okay, I like that.
Yeah, it had like the ORC logo on it and PR, and then just space for them to write in what it is.
I like it.
Mark?
Just saying, we have the bell that we use it for, Vernonia, because it is a BQ. But we could use it, and I know it's not just little kids go, oh, let's ring the bell. So it's not just people with PRs, but we can have that at other events too.
Well, the buttons we looked up, just pin buttons, and they were like 50 cents each, so it's not like a huge amount for them. So yeah, it was for 250 buttons, it'd be like $160 or something. I thought it would be pretty fun to do. So I will pursue that then. Cool. Okay, community outreach applications. We have a bunch of them, and what I didn't know is some of them are going to be easier than others, obviously. Do we just want to take them one at a time, or do you want to kind of do them in a group, or how do you want to approach this?
Well, a question before I get too far into it is, how much money do we have to give at this time? Because looking at all these totals, that's a fair amount of money. So it's the kind of thing where either we, how can I say, give everybody some of what they want, but all of what they want, or give some people what they want, but others get nothing, and all of that. What do we have? Do we have a maximum?
We have budgeted $10,000 for the year.
Okay.
This is the first batch. Now there will be another go around. If we have money left over, they can apply at by the end of August for our September meeting. Some of these who applied did receive money in September, but that was out of the last fiscal budget. And so they're applying for money for this coming year. Because one guy said, oh, I didn't know we could apply more than, it's like, well, yes, it's been less than 12 months, but it's different fiscal years for your club. So, okay.
I'd do it one at a time.
Let's just go ahead and do it one at a time and kind of take them on their merits and we discuss them one at a time and then we can take a vote.
Mm-hmm.
So the first one is the Pirate Running Club, and that one we gave them funding last year. And this is for, they're at Dayton grade school, and the club was implemented in 2024. Did everybody kind of look through the application and go over it? They gave out a really good expenditure thing. And the number of students, average number of students is 151 participating each week. So it's a large number of students, and their money would go to basically their giveaways, their lanyards, the Easy Scan Lap Tracker app, which I thought was really great, and the milestone prizes, marathon prize, so things like that. So I thought it was a very well thought out application, and we have given it to them before. So I was leaning toward approving their application.
I love the application, the effort that was put into it, getting younger folks into running. Yeah, I mean, this one I really enjoyed.
Yeah, this was a no-brainer for me.
Do we anticipate that they'll request again in the fall?
They could. What I would say is that if they've already received money in the fiscal year, I would not give them as much priority depending on what other applications we have. So I wouldn't necessarily turn them down, but if they've already gotten money from us this year, I would not necessarily.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Okay, let's try that. So that's what a vote. Let's go. So do we want to vote to approve the Private Running Club application for $1,000?
Do we do a show of hands, or what do you want to do?
Do you need a motion?
I would say.
I will move.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay, so Deb is motioning, Carrie seconding, approving Pirate Running Club for the $1,000 that they requested. Everybody in favor? Raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so that one is approved. The other one is Liberty Fit for $1,000. I think we all know Liberty Fit. We all know how much they help us at our events. They also had a really good application, very clearly spelled out of what they were doing. Any questions about their application? Okay. I would welcome.
I motion to approve Liberty Fit
for $1,000.
I second.
Mark was seconded it.
Sorry, it's for $1,000. In their application, I'm seeing 1,800 as the request.
Was it 1,800? They're requesting in monetary or in kind is 1,000. For Liberty.
Maybe I'm.
You might be looking at some.
Is there another club?
COF request -- Liberty Fit.
The one I have has 1,000.
Okay, sorry, apologies. I may be looking maybe at an older one or something.
Okay. Yeah.
So maybe we just move to approve 1,000.
To approve 1,000. Yeah. All in favor of approving Liberty Fit for 1,000, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that motion passes. You're approved. Okay. Tualatin Hills Parks and Rec Middle School Track and Field Program. They're requesting $1,039.60. I love the detail on it. We had approved giving them money last fall for their cross country program. This is for the track and field program. that they have. So, and they're doing it that's for the magnets, for the speed ladders, the lap stopwatches, and just I think the prizes too. So they had a real detailed one there. So were there any questions about THPRD? Okay. Anybody want to?
We talked about, is that like, this is why I'm, the whole thing about when is a year? Is a, calendar year or fiscal year kind of a thing.
Well, that's what I was saying. This is our new fiscal year. So they applied for funds. They got approved for funds in September from the last fiscal year's budget. So now now they may apply again in September for cross country. And I would say the same thing. If they have already received some funding, depending on how much we have, we might not approve them for the future. It just depends on how much we have and how many applications we have.
Mhm.
Because I'm thinking like if we give them 1,000 this time around, the next time around, we would not. I mean, or, just to, share the wealth is, is my thought.
All comes down to who applies and how much money we have left in the fund.
Okay.
So
Okay.
question on that, because THPRD are we going to designate like THPRD track and then THPRD cross country?
Yeah, this is
So
specific.
we're not doing, hey, it's always cross country instead of track, because track's always going to be in spring, cross country is always in the fall.
Yeah. Because when they applied in September for cross country, I was familiar with their track program. I wasn't just familiar with the cross country. And I said, hey, did you want money for track as well? And he says, well, they're two separate programs. We're going to apply for that separately. So
Okay.
he may come back in the fall for cross country, but.
So the risk, it sounds like the risk is if we approve them for the money now under the spring program, the fall program may not get priority. Right?
That's a possibility.
Okay.
But if he's received $1,000 each fiscal year, I think he would understand that if we don't have funds to give him.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions about that? Okay, do we have a motion to approve the THPRD for, I'm gonna round it up.
I'll go
1,000.
for it.
Okay, Joe Phillips. I'll second. Julia seconds. Okay, and I would say let's just go for 1,040 instead of 139.60.
I agree.
Okay.
Funny.
Round it up. Okay, any, all in favor, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Hi.
Okay, any opposed?
So you got to make it 1040 during tax season?
Yes, 43 tax. Okay, the next one is the Forest Grove Running Club. And this one, they have also received funds from us in the past. And they're similar to THPRD or for the Pirate. They're a middle school running club, I believe. And it's elementary and middle school kids fun for that. And so they had, from fall of 92, they had 92 registered for youth cross country. We expect a minimum of 100 runners for track and field in the spring of 2025. So this would be similar to probably the THPRD. They're just a little bit small, just a little bit smaller than THPRD. And they were requesting $1,000.
I really liked that that group and also THPRD are they help multiple schools too.
Yeah.
So there's like multiple schools that don't have programs that they create like a place for those kids to be able to get involved in running sports.
I really like the fact that they are hitting the kids at the crucial age when they're going to be excited about getting interested in this sport. And it's a large number of kids that they're impacting. So that's what I would like. Any other questions about the Forest Grove Running Club?
So with the three that we've done the Pirate and the Liberty Fit and the THPRD with the Forest Grove, what would that bring our total to?
4,000. If we approve that 4,000, that would bring it to 4,000 out of the 10,000 in the budget.
All right.
So I motioned approving Forest Grove Running Club for $1,000.
I second the motion.
Seconded. All in favor, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I got one question. And
Sure.
this helps the magnet students?
No.
Or
I-
is it-
Nope, it does not.
Oh.
It's for all the kids in the Forest Grove area.
okay, because they have their own. I know some schools in Forest Grove that have their own track team,
Yeah.
This is
so they
not
can
for
be on
them.
that too.
Yeah, this
Okay.
is something. Okay, so no opposed, that passes. So then we get into the two different, okay, so here we get into, we have two more. We have the Pacific University Junior Boxer All Sports Camp. And they didn't request a specific amount. They would like us to sponsor entries for participants, 325 per sponsorship. I think I agreed. I forget who said it. Was it Susan who responded? I like Pacific University. However, I think a lot of college camps for different things. And this is not running specific. It's all sports, and the money would be going to help one or two people, not a large number of participants. So I didn't feel like this request met as much of our mission as the other requests that we've had. That was my thoughts on it. So
I agree.
any other thoughts on that?
I agree, yeah, it's, you know, we're looking for running our ideas, running specific programs and serving as many people as possible. And this one does not meet those criteria, so.
So I'm hearing that we're going to deny this request for didn't request anything. Okay, so I will let them know that their request was denied.
So do we need to motion to deny?
Okay,
I was gonna ask the same thing.
Oh, sorry.
I'll move to deny for the Pacific University.
I'll second.
Very seconded. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Or
Deny, yes.
deny, yes, the motion is to deny the request.
request.
Any opposed? Okay, it is denied officially. Thank you. All right. The last request is actually three different requests, and Carissa provided some super helpful information, and I really agreed with her comments on this. This is one where they want $1,000 for a lecture series. They want $1,000 for childcare and $750 for snacks for their group. And I had asked him some additional questions about them. How many people did they serve? What they had a membership? They're not a nonprofit. And Carissa made some really good points of, you know, if they're going to be a running club, they really should be adhering to, for example, the Road Runners Club of America guidelines for a running club. And then they're simply not. And so I liked her idea of going back and saying, if you want to incorporate yourself as a nonprofit or join RRCA, get some information from them on how to run a club. If you haven't had any financials before, they have really good advice on how to do that. I just hesitate to approve that sizable amount of money for a smaller number of people. And I don't want to get into childcare. Honestly, I think the liability is just too great.
I agree.
I don't want to go there. And I didn't think their request for the lecture series was realistic. They wanted to get like Shalane Flanagan, and I'm like, you're not going to get Shalane Flanagan for $1,000 for a little local running club. So I didn't think their requests were realistic, and I thought we could help them better by pointing them in the direction of RRCA and giving them advice on how to strengthen their club and kind of figure out what they want to do and things that they could do before they then ask for money from another club.
And I will point out that their structure is not dissimilar to other unofficial kinds of like running club, not clubs per se, but meetups where people will go. There's like, it's called NOPO Run Club, but it's just like basically a meetup to run. I think there's FOPO, which is Foster Powell. I don't think that any of them are incorporated, but it sounds like maybe the people in this club the runners weren't feeling confident about, like, they were in the beginning process of learning about running. They wanted like speaker series. Like, if they need support with certified coaches going in and doing little 5, 10, 15-minute spiels before their runs, like, I'm a certified coach, we could support them in helping them find that. But there are ways to find those resources. It's not quite as challenging as what this requires.
Well, and are they currently members of ORRC, or are they coming to look at ORRC for helping to fund their own? I mean, it seems like there's maybe an opportunity to say, if this is something you want to do, we'd like to be able to maybe support you, but why don't you join our club, and then maybe there's something we can do together. I mean, I think that we have to limit. I'm all about helping the community, but I think that our mission is better served helping people that are like the school programs and getting kids involved in healthy initiatives, and offering memberships to, run our races, but to help clubs that are people out there that are just wanting to do something is not in our mission. That's my feeling. So
Looking at this from also like an opportunity cost perspective, like our remaining budget would give us space to get both of the Bluetooth timing systems that the clubs asked for, which would be like a big old Christmas present if that was dropped to them. And if we did offer this, I mean, the lecture series is not really that compelling to me. Even wanting to support this club, I feel like there would be other ways. And it feels like doing one part of this is kind of, I mean, if we don't need one part and not others, they're still hampered by having to find funds or having to support, like, either the childcare or the snacks, whatever, the lecture series. Shalane Flanagan's wow, wonderful thought.
Yeah.
I'll say, but anyway, so it would leave us space to do both of these timing systems if we wanted to, versus just one.
very good point.
And there's no informal running club that I know that hands out snacks. I'm just gonna say, like, people bring their own food. It's super nice. Like, I think they're doing a really great community service in
Well, how many people were they anticipating? Because $750, that's a lot of money.
Well, for the whole year, it's budgeting $15 per week, and they get like 20 to 30 people on the runs. So,
yeah.
But it was the people would get reimbursed for what they paid, and then he said that they would give us back the rest of the funds they didn't use, and I'm like, no. That's not how it works.
No.
Yeah. If it was something along the lines of, if they were an established club, and like we have the Monday night and the Thursday night workouts with foot traffic, and if this was an additional, like, Wednesday nights at wherever they meet, I'd say, okay, maybe pizza once a month or something, but I wouldn't, because they haven't established themselves and it's more like you said, a meetup. I don't think I would necessarily want to encourage that just yet. Maybe if they kind of got everything together and work with our RRCA and everything, and
Because like foot traffic gets waivers.
yeah, foot traffic gets waivers. They have people to leave their, type of thing. So
Yeah.
I think it could eventually be something that we possibly contribute to, but not necessarily right now while they're just starting out.
Yeah.
So I move to deny the request.
I second.
Carrie seconded. Any more discussion? All right, all those in favor of denying the request for Rock Creek Club, say aye. Raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so that is denied. I'll let them know, and I will pass along the information that Carissa provided, and also just kind of say we'll provide some guidance if they need some help in setting up as a club too. Okay, the last one I kind of threw in there. THPRD and Forest Grove did not specifically request funding. I'm asking about this in a capacity just as presence prerogative, what I want to do. They both said that they need Bluetooth timing systems, and Forest Grove is actually purchasing it. Their budget, you can see, is going to be over budget by like $2,000 because they think they need it. THPRD wants one, they just don't have the funding for it. THPRD specifically said, without a Bluetooth timing system, the system they use in track and in cross country is a manual timing system where you press the button when people cross the line. And because of that, if they have runners who would normally qualify for state because of their time, they cannot qualify because the state won't accept a handheld timing. So Bluetooth would be an electronic system where if kids are good enough, they could qualify for regional and state events. And that's why the Bluetooth timing system is important to both of these organizations. And I would love to be able to provide them these things, whether it comes out of this specific budget or maybe part of this budget and out of our reserves. I just think that would be a really neat thing to provide both of these because they do help so many kids across the counties. I just think it would be a wonderful idea to do for them and strengthen the relationship between us and them and their families. And I just think it'd be a great idea. So
Yeah.
I throw that proposition out to you to discuss.
I think it's fantastic. I think we'd be over budget by $40 for what we allocated for the outreach applications, and I'd also just be curious if there was a way to kind of tastefully, include like an ORRC logo, with them or something, like, have that as sort of like a ongoing legacy thing, but nothing I would like even climb a hill for, let alone die on.
Deb?
I think it's a good idea.
I'm a bit more hesitant on this because, they didn't specifically ask for it. If we wanted, I would recommend that, going back to both those groups and saying, hey, we'd really like to help you, but maybe it's a little bit more than we want to spend. But, if we were to say we'll put up X amount, then if you can find matching funds, something like that, or more, I don't know, something more concrete. Cause I don't know. I would rather I would rather help more groups than fewer groups. And to my mind, if we spend it all $10,000 now, either we end up going over budget or in the fall, people, worthy groups, there's no money for them, and I guess I would take a wait and see attitude about it. Like if we've already approved $4,000 worth, to stick with that and then leave the 6 sitting there. But approach THPRD and Forest Grove and say, hey, apply again in the fall. And, if other people apply, we would give money to other groups. If nobody else does, well, sure, here you go. No one else applied. So, it's yours kind of thing. That's the approach that I would take.
And I think Hillsborough Parks and Rec, they have a track program too for kids. I just don't think they know about the grants that our club offers. Otherwise, they would ask for it too. So,
Okay.
'cause I know they're in need. So,
Deb Brown?
I would be cautious because it would be our whole budget for the whole year. I think, as Mark was kind of pointing out, and there are other grant resources that I think that they should look into. So I know that like Liberty Fit has gotten the Nike grant. I think that these clubs should look into the Nike grant for timing, even though one of them is. So yeah, I think that there's the Kids Run the Nation grant fund. There's a Brooks Future Run Team grant. There's a US ATF Foundation Youth Club grant application. So I think we should encourage them to diversify and try to secure the funding through some other places, or at least secure partial funding. And then we could consider that in the fall, depending on what they've worked out.
Carrie?
So just to confirm, what is the amount of each timing system? Is it 3,000?
Forest Grove said 3,000. When I spoke with Connor last year, he mentioned it in his cross-country application because I had asked him, did you want something? And he said, and then at the Racer Workshop, he said 3,500. So I think it probably depends on which Bluetooth system you're actually looking at.
Yeah, meet timer was 3,000.
Meet timer 3018 was what Forest Grove listed in their budget for purchasing. Adnan?
One proposition compromise maybe. Forest Grove, I'm looking at their application, they did specifically call out the timing system as basically the first thing in their purpose for how the funds will be used. So maybe there's potential there to basically increase their 1,000 to the 3,000.
That's a good point.
Yeah, just sort of as, instead of like 4, have it just be the 3.
Mm-hmm.
But and I do think that, yeah, a very good point was brought up that this does deplete our funds for the year, but that also is kind of like how we want to handle like rolling applications.
I'd like to give them the timing system. I think we've got the funds, and if we didn't want to deny other groups in August or September, could we pull some out from our reserves? We've got plenty, and this is a perfect thing to
Spend it on.
I mean, I think it's and like you said, now we could just say, well, we don't want to do this 1,000, but we do want to pay for your timer. Let's give the 3,000 instead of the 1,000 for the one group. And then maybe we could do the same thing for THPRD. We could, I don't know. Because if we give them, if we did that, if it was 3,000 for THPRD instead of 1,000 and Forest Grove for 3,000, that's 366. Okay, we've already approved Forest Grove and THPRD each for $1,000. If we increased the amount we gave them to 3,000, that would put our total expenditures at 8,000 for the year. We'd have 2,000 left for September. And we could always, again, take money out of reserves. We have donations coming in from our events to help fund that.
I'm supportive of, even if it meant taking money out of the reserves within reason. I think that it's a good community give back if it means the chance of people that are not, they're missing out on an opportunity because they don't have the right timing system. I have a hard time with that, I guess. And things have become so expensive and budgets are so tight, whether it's personally or professionally. It's an opportunity to bless local organizations. And so I think if there's a way that we can work it out to do that, I would like to see that happen.
So I know track season is coming up now, but in the future, they have other grants like USTAF and stuff like that. What if they apply for that and the club matches it up to a certain dollar amount? That way they could get fully funded, but the club won't have to fund it fully.
I don't know about the other grants they've applied for. I know Connor has said that he's tried contacting Nike and they've turned him down flat. So I don't know if they just don't want to work with THPRD or, but Susan?
Carissa just asked a really good question. I just want to make sure we saw that. Sorry, Susan. Go ahead.
That's okay.
Carissa asked if there were any guidelines for the circumstances in which reserves may be used. No. Basically, there was.
I was thinking that first of all, I was very glad that your math skills were better than Mark's math skills, and that we're not using up the full 10,000. And that leaves us 2,000. And then if we do have the reserves, we could still potentially give out awards in the fall.
Yeah.
I think the 3,000 is a bit of a big ask, but I also think that I agree with Carrie. Things cost so darn much, and funding sources are getting cut here and there, and it's hard. I think it'd be kind of a great thing to be supportive of those two groups, THPRD and Forest Grove, and give them the money enough for the timing.
I mean, that's going to help them years to come. That's not just a one-year thing. That's
Right.
an ongoing that's an ongoing blessing to these organizations. I don't know how else to phrase that, but to me that we're giving back in years, not just a one-time shot.
Right.
And I will also say that last year for our September ones, we had originally only budgeted, I think, 3,000 for community outreach last year, and we actually increased the budget by 3,000 and take it out. So it's not impossible to change the budget if we need to.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm at work and I have to get back to you, so I'm gonna.
Okay.
I move to amend our two earlier motions for THPRD and the Forest Grove Running Club to amend both of those motions from one to increasing both to $3,000.
Okay.
Rather than
I'll second that.
amending the two motions we've already, or it's a new motion, I don't know if it's a new motion or not, but for those two, I'm not a parliamentarian.
Okay. Seconded?
I second.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay. All in favor of the new motion, raise your hand or say aye.
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 Any opposed?
I'm opposed.
Okay. Unopposed. Motion passes. I will let them know. Thank you guys so much for this really good discussion. I really appreciate all of your thoughtful comments. I know this will be really amazing for them, and I think this is a really good thing that we're going to do. So I thank you so much for considering this and approving it.
Cool.
Okay. Okay. The last item on the discussion topics is the free member run poker relay proposal. Okay, it's back. It's back. It's It's not back yet. I just had a phone call right before this meeting from THPRD. And she's going to check the date. She doesn't think anything's happening on September 1st. The main question is the park available? Because they might be doing construction this summer. So if they're doing construction, we can't do it. But if it's, basically runnable inside the park, that's what we would propose, because we don't have an event now in September with Beth Dam Run moving. And this would bring back the free member run for everybody that we used to have in July, and we get back a holiday. So that was the proposal. What did you all think?
I'm for it.
Hey.
It sounds like a cool idea. There's still some logistics to work out, but I think it's a cool idea,
Julia,
So,
Julian,
I think it needs some more work, but yeah, I think on general concept, it's a good idea.
when did you want to do it again? Was it Memorial Day? I'm sorry.
Labor Day, September 1st.
Yeah.
People will be gone that weekend. A lot of people travel that weekend. So
yeah, we don't anticipate it being very large, but if we just said, hey, we're offering a free run for members, like we used to on July, that was the main.
Yeah.
So it's more an opportunity to get people together that are in town, but we're not expecting enormous results or profit necessarily.
No. Yeah, I mean, Tracy's like a max of 200 people, because the park, of course, they're running on bike trail. I don't think we're going to get more than 100, maybe like 50. 100, that's fine. So I don't anticipate being very big.
Yeah.
Are you all in favor then of, I guess I need a motion for adding this event to our calendar if there's no construction at Greenway Trail? I'll move.
I'll second.
Okay. Okay, so the motion is to approve a free member run on Labor Day. Julie and Tracy will be the race directors, pending additional information from THPRD. All in favor? All in favor, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that passed. All right, we will get going on that.
If y'all don't mind, I got to get going. I apologize. But I'll just cover my things real quick, but just Vernonia is on schedule. Everything permitting, shirts, swag, the whole thing, it's all on schedule. What else? RRCA convention, we are ready to roll on that. The group has airfare, hotel reservations, registration, and also just today I rented a van. So, because I'm a passive use in Uber, but think about the convention this year, normally it kind of spills over into Sunday, and this year basically it's done on Saturday, so Sunday's wide open. So since y'all are going to be back in my my old neighborhood, I'm going to drive you around and show you the sights. So I've rented a vehicle that'll get us from the airport to the convention, and you know, when we have free time, we can you know, have the freedom to go do other things too. But that's all. It's all on schedule. And those of you attending the convention, they posted most of their workshops now. So I would recommend going to the website and looking at the schedule, decide whether you want to do the run or not, and just kind of get a preliminary ideas about which workshops you'd like to attend, you know, kind of get you know, general idea. As we get closer, I'll be sending some more emails to people just about, you know, what to bring and all that kind of stuff. But you know, go to the website because things are starting to come together as far as workshops and speakers and all of that.
Great.
So I'm gonna do. Any questions about either of those, Vernonia or the convention?
No, good. Thank you, Mark.
Sure. All right.
Thank you,
All
Mark.
right. Back.
Okay, so super quickly, Shamrock Run's coming up this weekend. We have the booth fully staffed. We sent instructions out to everybody who's volunteering. Thank you, everybody who's volunteering. And we have food and swag that we're going to set up on Friday. So that's no food. No, chocolate turkeys, right? Mark brought the chocolate turkeys. So that's all set to go. And then Champoeg, Mark, you'd already talked a little bit about Champoeg. Is there anything else you want to tell us about Champoeg? I know the numbers are down, but that's.
No, I went there not this Monday, but last Monday, and the weather was really nice. Parking lot was empty. Too bad it wasn't that day that the race was.
Moved it for the weather, and now.
Yep. So it's just always going to be parking because last year they couldn't open the overflow. So if it's rainy all week like it's supposed to be, it might be closed. So we may have to use the roadways to park just like last year. So.
Oh, we've got another week and a half before it, so hopefully we'll get some more numbers.
So I'll just make a comment real quick. So Mark, I sent an email to the race director email asking if there's any specific, I'm preparing to make a final push on volunteers. If there's anything you want me to highlight, let me know. Otherwise, I'll just do a general request.
Okay.
But let me know.
Yeah, I'll check with Valerie because she was going to reach out to some of the high schools to see if they have groups.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. Thank you.
And Mark, since you're the race following Hagg Mud, are there any specific supplies you need? Because I have a bunch, I don't know if you're planning on serving hot food. I have soup and I have a lot of leftover cheese. If you wanted to do grilled cheese, and I'm going to pick up the propane tanks.
What kind of soups do you have?
It's a vegan minestrone. And then
Okay.
I got like a backup of some other kind of tomato vegetable soup too.
Okay. Because we were going to do like last year, tomato and then chicken noodle, and that's it.
Where did you guys buy the soup already?
No, I didn't. I was waiting for the numbers. I was going to go next week.
Okay.
To
Well,
see what the
why don't
numbers
you
come
email
up
me
with.
because I have it in my freezer.
Okay.
It was very good soup, by the way.
Yeah, it was good soup.
Very good.
It costs $50 a gallon, so you know, like, I think I could go through it in a year, but
Yeah, you're gonna tire of it. But it was very tasty.
it was very good. But also I have cheese if you want grilled cheese, and then you'd have to decide if you want the propane tanks because I have to pick them up from Mark Freese's house.
Okay.
And I have Joel's. I have to pick up Joel's tank too.
Okay. Yeah, we'll need the propane because I think Ken, Valerie's husband, brought them for the last time he brought it home because he couldn't store it in the garage. But
Yeah.
I don't know where, if they ended up from race to race. So.
Yeah, that's a good question. So you'll have to tell me if you need more and how many, because I can have 3 for sure and maybe up to 5.
Okay, that should be good. I think last year we went through 2. So.
Okay. And are you doing the heat lamps or no?
No, we weren't going to do heat lamps.
Okay.
If it's cold, you just need to run faster. So.
Okay. when we dried out the canopies, Jeff Werman and I figured out the sides and which sides go on which canopies and match them. And
Okay.
so any canopy that has a black cover on it or is zipped into a black cover has either side, the sides with it in the side pocket, or there's a couple canopies that roll on wheels that we folded the sides and stuck them on the top, and then it's put it down. It's like a upside down sock that you put over the top so the wheels can go.
Oh,
So if you
okay.
don't want ones that have sides, just take the naked ones that don't have, they're not in a black bag, basically. But if you do
Yeah.
want ones with sides, it'll be a complete set that works in each one.
How many canopies did you use?
Well, we had about 10 total.
Oh, okay.
Like one at each aid station and then a bunch. But we also set up warming tents, and I don't know if we'll do it quite the same way next year. So we had 3 that had sides, but it turned out I had grabbed sides that didn't fit on them. So,
Oh, okay.
so that was a learning experience. The volunteers figured out which ones fit, and we luckily had enough sides.
Okay. Yeah,
So-
because I think we only used 2. So one at the aid state, well, both at the aid stations.
And do you use sides on them or no sides?
Nope. We had it open.
Yeah. So yeah, there's some green ones that don't have sides.
Okay.
And they're a little lighter too. So those are a good bet. Or just don't take the sides out of the pocket. And the ones
And
that
do you guys still have like goo or anything like that?
Oh my God, I have 2 boxes of goo. I
Okay.
have a box of sugar that Carrie brought me. I think Tracy and Julia took the hot
We have
cocoa,
about-
right?
Yeah, we'll bring them on Friday
Okay.
before when you're loading up. We're just gonna bring all the food.
We've got
and
like
drinks.
how many liters of Coke and ginger ale
and cookies
and cookies? Yeah, we've got all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
'Cause I think we got about 50 something for the 20K, 30K runners/walkers. But as walkers only, there's probably 13 for the 20K, none for the 30K. So everybody should be done. We won't be waiting for stragglers that much. So
You don't need to buy like any finishing drinks.
okay. Yep.
Because I still have some seltzer. You're not going to serve alcohol, are you? Because
No, we're not doing that.
Okay. Too bad I can't get rid of my alcohol with you. So I'm just gonna sit in my basement until autumn leaves, I guess. I don't know. So yeah, but I'll bring all the non-alcoholic drinks too. I can come to load up or something to give you all the stuff, Mark.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Awesome. Is there anything else? We kind of covered everything. I thought this was going to take us a lot longer than it did. Any other questions for the good of the order, or you guys are
Alright.
awesome.
Well, I think I might have a topic for a future meeting. And maybe there's a reason for this already, but Debbie mentioned moving some of the money out of checking into savings. And I was curious if we had talked about moving it into a high yield savings account. I see you shake your head, Debbie. I mean, if this is a non-starter, oh yeah. So I mean, it may be something to consider. If we do something like even just like 3.5%, we could pay for a timing system over the course
I
of
was
the
just
year.
saying, yeah, I was just saying we hadn't talked about it.
Oh,
That's
sorry about Sorry, I thought you were like, no, bad idea.
No, we're not doing it. No.
Yeah, so maybe something to bring up.
I
Yes.
think we talked about putting together a task force on, the fiscal investments and stuff. And so if you guys want to form that task force and talk about what to do with our funds, that would be great.
Yeah, I'd definitely be interested.
And I think Valerie wanted in on that too.
Yeah.
Anyone else can too, just let us know.
Okay, sounds like a plan. All right, well then our next meeting is Tuesday, April 8th. And I hope to see a bunch. I'll probably see some of you at the Expo, and if not, or at Champoeg. Right. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank
you.
Thank you.
Bye.